All right, hello and welcome. Thank you very much to you, our audience, for joining us today at this special edition of the online MuleSoft Meetup. Today we'll be covering the MuleSoft Hackathon, so I have the great pleasure of being able to be joined by Dave Norris, and looking forward to sharing all the exciting news with you. All right, so let's begin. So in case you've not joined us before at the online meetup group, I'd like to give you a huge welcome. I'm one of the organizers for this meetup group, and we have a number of organizers all across the world, including in America. We run sessions typically 3 to 4 times a month at different time slots as well. And one of the benefits of this group is that all of the content is recorded and available on YouTube after the session as well. And so if you'd like to be notified about future sessions, please sign up at the link that's on the screen, and you'll be able to join us for future sessions and learn a lot more about the world of MuleSoft. So just some guidelines for today. You should hopefully be seeing a chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. You're more than welcome to use that chat function to introduce yourself and make any other comments during the session. We do have a dedicated Q&A link for today as well, and that link is available at the top of the screen. It's the slides.app link that you can see. Please use that for any specific questions that you're going to have. And the reason is that it's much easier for us to present that on the screen later on when we answer your questions. All the slides and recordings and materials for today will be shared within 24 hours on the event page. So just bookmark that page and come back to it this time tomorrow. And if all works well, you'll be able to see all of the materials that have been presented. So before we get started into the actual content, I just wanted to make some announcements that are very useful to know as members of the MuleSoft community. And it's something that you might even choose to share with colleagues that you might be working with in the MuleSoft ecosystem. So the first one is that you may have noticed that Transit Gateway support has been launched in the Anypoint platform, and that was within the past 30 days. So for many of you who might be using Cloud Hub as your place of deployment for your MuleSoft applications, Transit Gateway has been an often requested feature. And so support for Transit Gateway was launched earlier in the month, and it just means that you have a more mature option in terms of administering your network connections. So if this is something that your team has been looking forward to, then please search through the docs and understand how this works. More than happy to also speak to your customer success team to understand how you can get enabled on this as well. This is now generally available and recommended for use. For those of you who are working in the development space, especially with connectors, there have been a number of new connectors that have been launched for Mule4 over the last few weeks. So the ones on the left of the screen are all new connectors. Once you get the slides, you can click through for the references, but they're all available on the docs and on Exchange right now. On the right-hand side, we have a list of connectors that have had enhancements made to them as well. So if you are a user of any of these systems, I strongly recommend you just go through and have a look at the capabilities of these connectors. One thing to keep in mind is that these connectors could be potentially used in the hackathon. So if you do have a use case that uses potentially, Gmail or Microsoft Excel Online, you could be using these connectors in your solutions as well. For anyone who is using and administering a Runtime Fabric instance, there is a new version of Runtime Fabric that was released recently. Has a number of benefits to it, including having more control over the ingress controller that you have. So again, if you are a user of Runtime Fabric, please head through the release notes and understand what has changed and maybe plan for adopting it. I think many of you would have had the notification for multi-factor authentication yet already. And if you haven't had it yet or haven't enabled it yet, it's strongly encouraged to enable multi-factor authentication as another way of further securing your Anypoint account. So this can be enabled at an organizational-wide level, and you can have exclusions if needed for specific accounts, like service accounts as an example. So it's a very simple way of introducing more security, and it is going to be more and more prevalent and potentially enforced at some point in time as well. So if you haven't enabled it for yourself yet or haven't configured it, strongly encourage you to do so. For anyone who's been keeping on top of the Friends of Mac series, you would have noticed that there have been new videos being added every month. Most recently, we've had some videos added in the space around anypoint service mesh, building custom connectors with the Mule SDK, which is quite a niche topic, as well as some content on securing API access. So I strongly recommend you bookmark the Friends of Macs page either on the videos.mulesoft.com landing page or on YouTube, because there's a lot of very useful videos that are typically between 5 and 15 minutes, and they give you a good introduction as well as a useful overview of what the feature is. I remember, I think it was yesterday, there's a video being launched on the new Teams feature. And so if you haven't implemented Teams and want to understand how that works, that's a very useful video to understand it. Strongly recommend that for you. And that concludes all of our announcements for today. So once again, the slides will be posted and you can click through any of the links that have been presented on the slides once you get them. So we'll now move into our main topic for today, which is the launch of the MuleSoft Hackathon. So it is my great pleasure to be joined by Dave Norris from the developer relations team at MuleSoft. I'll just do a slightly deeper introduction to myself, since I didn't do one earlier. My name is Royston Lobo. I'm a senior technical architect in the customer success team at MuleSoft. And I'm currently based out of Singapore, which is where my background has been inspired for today. With me, I've got Dave. Dave, could you do a brief introduction for yourself, please?
Sure. Dave Norris, as Royston said, a developer advocate at MuleSoft. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and I've been with Salesforce for over 10 years now, but joined MuleSoft about 3 months ago. So pleased to meet you all, and here to help Royston officially launch the MuleSoft Hackathon with the wider audience here.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dave. And for anyone who doesn't know Dave personally, he's extremely experienced in the Salesforce ecosystem. So if you do come in with a strong Salesforce background or want to understand more about how those two ecosystems can work better together, highly recommend keeping in touch with Dave through one of the many different avenues he's active in at the moment. All right. So today, Dave and I have the pleasure of sharing with you some information about the hackathon. So we'll be covering a number of different sections, including eligibility, submission guidance, and most importantly, the prizes. We will have some time towards the end for questions. So if you do have them, please use the link at the top of the screen to ask your questions, and we'll try and get through all of them at the end. So I'll begin by stating this disclaimer, which is quite an important one, because we are bound by certain restrictions for this hackathon this year. So it is open to only residents of certain countries, and the countries that are eligible are mentioned on screen right now. So if you do live in one of these countries, then that's good news. That's all the more motivation for you to participate. But if you don't live in one of these countries, then hold tight. Hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be able to run a hackathon where you too can participate as well. So just introducing the hackathon for today's session. If you haven't seen the details already, this is the second time we're running the MuleSoft Hackathon. So last year was the first version of this. And it's really an opportunity that we've put together for you to showcase your MuleSoft skills in an innovative and fun way that might not be available through your everyday actions as part of your work. So with that, you get an opportunity to network with like-minded professionals, both in the MuleSoft space and maybe the broader developer ecosystem. And just to make sure you have some encouragement and motivation to participate, there's an opportunity to win a decent number of prizes, including a lot of community recognition as well. But most importantly is the fact that your submission needs to be made before the 1st of November, and there is a very specific closing time for that as well. So it's not a 48-hour hackathon like you might be used to in person. And the reason for that is, since we are a virtual hackathon, we acknowledge that it's a little more difficult to make the time in the current circumstances in the world. So having a period of somewhere between 6 and 7 weeks gives you enough time to hopefully think of an idea, work on it, improve it, and then make it ready for submission on the 1st of November. Now, all of the details on how to actually participate and win prizes, that's all available on the link, which is mulesoft.devpost.com. And we'll be going through this link in detail later on today. So with the categories, obviously with a hackathon, it makes sense to have a think about, well, what could you be doing with your idea? So to help you with focusing your efforts, there are 5 industry focus categories this year. So the 5 categories are healthcare and life sciences, finance, public sector and government, retail and consumer goods, and communication, media, and technology. Now, if you don't work in one of these industries, that's okay. You can still participate in one of these categories. And if you have an idea that goes across categories, then all we ask is you make sure you select one which you think is the strongest fit for your idea. So for as an example, you could be working on an idea related to healthcare, but it's somehow also related to government. So you may choose to make that nomination as to which category you want that to be considered under. However, we do only have these 5 categories, and so please take your best shot at the best fit. I'll now hand over to Dave, who's going to be sharing with us more details around submission, as well as prizes, and helping us with Q&A. So Dave, I will give you the opportunity to take over screen sharing. And that's coming through.
Royston, it's like we've planned this. Look at that, seamless. So I'm going to take you through, I guess, how you can, get involved with a hackathon, and also what the submission process looks like. I don't plan on potentially not using this slide, so I thought it'd be easier if I just showed you what it looks like if you're unfamiliar with DevPost. So MuleSoft.devpost.com will take you directly to the MuleSoft hackathon, but you can obviously search for it as well. If you register, if you haven't already registered with DevPost, it's a very simple process. I've brought this screen up just to show you. It's literally 10 questions, including just a confirmation that you have read the eligibility requirements, and then it will relist those countries Royston's already pointed out. So once you register, you'll then be taken to the homepage. And the homepage is going to, I guess, remind you what the hackathon's about. So it's going to remind you what to build, reinforces the categories to select. It also tells you what you should be submitting. So we'll be covering this later. So in order to submit to the hackathon, we do need to know what the project's all about. We would like an architecture diagram, a list of the tools you've used, a video, the industry it aligns to, and a link to a GitHub repository. Now, thankfully, in the submission process, we've actually included all of these bullet points as part of the submission, so it's very hard to forget to do something. We'll cover prizes a little bit later. I'm just going to sort of scoot down to the judging criteria, which wasn't on the slide. So if people are interested to know how will my submission get judged, you can see here that it's out of 150 points. So it uses a points-based system. And there are 4 categories that the judges will be using to filter their submissions. So how innovative is your project, which will get you a maximum of 50 points. How easy it is to use, and what's the user experience like, will get you 25 points. There's a heavy weighting towards obviously using MuleSoft's Anypoint platform. So, if you do submit something and you haven't used Anypoint platform, you're going to get 0 points here. So it's pretty important that you showcase the Anypoint platform capabilities and obviously submission quality. So the effort taken to write up the submission and create a video that showcases it will get you 25 points. Now, in order to cover how to submit, what I will do first is just go through some of these tabs that, again, aren't necessarily on the slide that I think is important to be aware of. We can obviously see, you can see your fellow participants that are also signing up for the hackathon. We've included a resources tab. So for anyone that perhaps hasn't been in the MuleSoft ecosystem for a long time, shouldn't prevent them from getting involved. So we have links to the documentation, some tutorials. You can check out last year's winner and all of last year's submissions if you want some a creative spark or to see what other people have done in the past. And then we've included some APIs that you might find useful and links to applications that offer a free trial. We also have an updates tab where we will post throughout November and October updates to the hackathon. So you can see there have been 2 already. The reason I'm showing you this is to highlight 2 things. One, there's a Slack channel available to you once you register for the hackathon, where you can communicate not only with the organizers, but your fellow hackathon participants. And we offer open mentoring sessions. So the MuleSoft mentors have been working hard to make themselves available to participants to help answer questions on the hackathon. So it might be guidance, it might be help with resources, or it might be you need help answering technical questions. So if you click that link, you will be taken to a document that looks like this. And what you can see is really a calendar view with a mentor that's made themselves available at a particular time. And they will have put the time zone and then a link to join that session if you would like. And you can see there are plenty of sessions to join. So don't hesitate to sign up to one of those and go along and attend if you want to hear what questions are being asked or have any questions yourself. So that's about it for the dev post part. The submission process. So we've gone across what you need to include. So you definitely need a GitHub repository. You definitely need an architecture diagram. You definitely need a demonstration video. The others, I think, are fairly self-explanatory. And the other important point is all materials must be in English, or at least include English translations. So what I'll do, again, to make it a little bit more interactive is just to show you what the submission process looks like. My intention here is just to show you that it's easier than perhaps we've made it look on the slides. If you have requested to be part of a team and you want to manage that team, then you can add your team members as part of this creating the project step. So this is just me creating a submission. I'm not submitting it yet. Then it will ask you for a project overview. Now you can see here that we've started to break down the bullet points into individual fields. So you'll need a project name, a short tagline or elevator pitch. Then you'll need to tell us what inspired you and how you built your project, some of the challenges you faced. And then you can upload an architecture diagram, select one of the industries, provide your GitHub repository link, and list out some of the tools you used. And that you can see that's pretty much it. And once you've filled out all of that additional information, you can actually preview what your submission is going to look like to the judges by hitting the preview link here. So you can individually or as a team work on your submission until the deadline, and then you can finally go to the submission page, which will lock it in for judging. So hopefully that covers some of these submission requirements, and you can see that the process is relatively straightforward. In terms of inspiration, So we saw in the resources tab, we'd linked to last year's winner, which I've got a screenshot of here. So again, just showing you what that looks like live. So if you click the link, it will take you to show it, and is a good use case of how the sections are broken down into the introduction and inspiration, a sample video of what that looks like, how they highlighted the features, they included an architecture diagram, and as they went through the implementation phase, they shared their GitHub repository. So if you did want some inspiration on what could look like last year, then this is a great place to go. And there are other submissions as well that we've linked to, not just last year's winner. Prizes, I deliberately skipped over earlier because this slide nicely summarizes it. What we're doing is saying that there'll be a first, second, and third place winner overall across all categories. And then we will have special mentions on top of the first 3 places for each industry category that didn't come first, second, or third. And you can see here that first place, you'll win $2,000 US, get $1,000 donation to the charity of your choice, and training and certification vouchers that are fairly significant. In terms of important dates, so the hackathon officially launched on DevPost on the 13th. The submission period will close on November the 1st. That's when I have to get to the submit part of DevPost. The judging will take place the first 2 weeks of November. And we're planning to announce the winners on November the 15th. So you still have a very significant amount of time, given normal hackathons are between 3 and 4 weeks, to do something cool. And if there are any questions, reach out on the Slack channel that's linked in DevPost. That's all I had. On to Q&A.
Thank you, Dave. I'll just take over Q&A if you can stop sharing. Just let me know when that pops up on your screen.
Yep, you're back
Fantastic.
live.
Thank you. All right, so we've had a couple of questions come in already. Just a reminder, if you haven't submitted a question yet for today, you can do so on the link that I've just pasted in the chat. It's also the one that's visible on the screen right now. So the first question we have here is, do we need to provide access details for the panelists to go through the demo themselves? So thank you for this question to whoever has asked it. So I think this does depend on what sort of access details we're talking about. So just as an example, if you are building a user experience or user interface for your submission, like a website or a mobile app or something like that, then it makes a lot of sense to provide those details to anyone who wants to consume that experience to be able to use it themselves. However, if you are developing an app by itself, we may not necessarily need access to the cloud to the anypoint account that's hosting the app, as long as the source code is provided. So if you are in doubt, strongly suggest providing those details. Just make sure that those are not details that lead to any confidential information. So nothing that's your company details or anything like that. Any details that you provide, you must be comfortable with anyone in MuleSoft or Salesforce having access to that. All right. Any comments around that, Dave, or do you think that covers it well?
No, unless there's any follow-up questions on what they meant by access details. The idea is that you could really sign up for a free trial and be able to take it from GitHub and reproduce it fairly easily. So if that helps you answer that question. That's
a great way to say it. Yes, the intent here is to be able to reproduce your submission in a fairly simple way. So it's the same intent that we have with the open source nature of the code as well. It's that anyone should be able to reproduce it using the steps that we've put together in the submission. All right, so moving on to our next question. I'll leave this one for you, Dave. Is there an anypoint platform trial that can be used for the hackathon that is more than 30 days?
Yes, I would love to say yes here, but the answer is no. So my suggestion to you is make sure that all of the assets you're creating, again, are in a version control repository that, when 29 days comes up, maybe you're on your first trial, that you can expire that trial, sign up for a new trial, and recreate where you're up to fairly easily. It's also a good way for you to sanity check that your GitHub repository does have everything you need in it, in order for the judges to reproduce it if they need to. Let me know if that answers the question.
Yep, that's the same answer I would have given as well. So there's nothing stopping you as a participant to creating more than one trial, but a single trial at this point in time will not be extended beyond 30 days. All right, I have not seen any more questions coming through, so you still have a couple of minutes or so to ask any questions using the link that's on screen at the moment. All right. I guess, Dave, while we're waiting for any questions to come through, are there any hackathon experiences in the past that you want to reflect on, or things that you think really make submissions stand out?
Well, I'm an introvert by nature, so anyone listening who thinks that they don't feel like their opinions matter or that the projects would be cool, I think they're the people that tend to do the standout projects. And if you are looking for people to work with, that's where I've got the most value out of hackathons in the past, is putting yourself out there. You've probably got a unique set of skills. So when you sign up, if you say I'm looking for a team, then the DevPost team will be in touch to try and sync you up with other people who are also looking for a team. It's a great way to meet people, and it's a great way to transfer that knowledge between you, because for sure some of you will be anypoint platform experts, but perhaps you need someone to help you create a website or a mobile app, or to use some AWS services to bring your service or product to life. So, connect with other people, and that's what I find works best with hackathons. Not to say there's anything wrong with working on your own, if that's the way you prefer to do it, but definitely encourage everyone to sign up to participate in some way.
Great, thank you. And do you have any comments around I know you mentioned the Slack community earlier that's available. Can you inspire some of our members to join, and what they would get by joining the Slack community?
Yeah, well, I can. Why don't we show it?
Of course.
I don't think
Just
there's
give me a
anything
moment.
stopping us. Oh, yeah, you can do it.
Yep. Oh, no, I've opened it for you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Give me 2 seconds. All right, here we go. So once you sign up for the hackathon, you'll get access to a Slack workspace called the MuleSoft Hackathon 2021. And Alexandra Martinez has set up some channels for us to collaborate in. So again, if you feel like you don't have a lot of MuleSoft anypoint platform experience, not only have we linked you to documentation or tutorials that can help you get up and running fairly quickly, but if you have technical questions, you can come in here and ask them. And you can see people like Alexandra are also putting in reminders for the mentors who are running sessions that you can join. So you can see here that Alex is scheduling a Slack post to remind you that there is a session happening in 10 minutes, and that nicely includes the link where you can go and open that up. And you can do that as well. You can ask any questions you like. So there are channels for general questions. So here you can see a post reminding you where you can go to look for team members. There's a participants tab under the dev post link. So it's a nice way of just centralizing any communications we do into one place, and for the participants to also interact. Anything else you'd say, Royston, that I've missed?
No, I think you've covered that well. Thank you for sharing that. We just had an audience member tell us that the Q&A function was temporarily closed. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to reopen the Q&A at that specific link that I'd posted, but I do have a new link for you, Jonathan. So if you're able to just pop your question in the link that I've shared, I'll get that up on the screen as soon as you've typed it in. Thank you for your patience on that one. All right. While we are waiting for the couple of questions to come through, I do want to mention that there is a training offer that's available to anyone who signs up for the hackathon. So if I remember correctly, and I'm going off memory here, for anyone who signs up to the hackathon, you will be eligible for a 50% training discount on any course of your choice. So there is, I do remember seeing this posted on LinkedIn in the last 24 hours, and there should be a source somewhere about this as well. But yes, you can ask on the Slack community once you join for more details if you're not able to find any details around that. So yeah, even more incentive to get involved. And just, even if it's a simple idea, it doesn't have to be extensive, but it's just going to hopefully push you to think about a new way of using MuleSoft that you might not have thought of before.
Were there any things from last year's hackathon, Royston, that sort of stuck out as things you thought were done really well, or things to avoid? Putting you on the spot here.
Absolutely. No, more than happy to share. I was fairly involved in last year's hackathon. Yeah, I'd say a couple of things that really stuck out were last year, the videos were not mandatory. And what we noticed is that the better submissions did have videos that were quite thorough in terms of making the submission very understandable and digestible for the judges as well as for everyone else. So I think when I think about the hackathon submissions, there's two dimensions. One is the quality of the idea in the submission itself, as in, is this something new, innovative, useful? Like you would see the points that have been allocated to that. But then there's also an element of making it very presentable and easy to understand for someone who is new to this idea. So if you are weak in either of those domains, I strongly encourage using the mentors and the Slack community to get guidance on how to improve your submission. Because yes, not all of us have strengths in every domain of the hackathon, but you could really help your chances, or boost your chances by looking at a submission that sort of is well-rounded in every domain, especially in terms of how it's presented with the materials that you're putting together. So even the things like the architecture diagram, while they were optional last year, the better submissions had a diagram that displayed how this solution was put together. And we often know that a picture speaks 1,000 words. So that made a huge difference in trying to understand what the solution was trying to do.
Nice. Some good points there. I think there's a question coming in from Cindy asking, how are you able to join the Slack workspace?
Yep. Do you want to take that one, Dave?
Yeah. So as soon as you register for the hackathon, Cindy, if you could just go to the dev post and create an account if you don't already have one, and then join the hackathon, then someone will add you to the Slack workspace, and then you'll get notified that you've been added. Okay. So you need to join the hackathon first. Sorry, Royston, you were going to say something.
I have a feeling it might be slightly different.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure. So there is once you do sign up to the hackathon, there is a email that comes through, which also has a link that says join the Slack workspace. So it might be more of a pull mechanism than a push. As well as on the dev post website, one of the actions that it will prompt you to is to sign up to the Slack workspace. So you'll have an invite link, which you can click through and get you in. Now, if you have trouble doing that, please use the dev post, the contact or the help section there. It should not be very difficult to get that sorted out for you. Thank you for your question, Cindy.
Yeah, my bad. Thanks, Royston. So there's a to-do section on the right-hand side of the overview page. And the very first one is join the Slack. So if you click that to do, it will actually take you to the workspace.
Excellent. And Cindy, if you have already registered and cannot join, maybe we can hang around for a couple of minutes at the end just to make sure you're all okay. Let us know if you're able to try that out. in the meanwhile. All right, I'll put forward the question we received via the link. So the question is this year's format and rubric similar to last year's hackathon? So thank you for this question. I'll take this one since I was involved in both last year and this year. So in terms of the format and rubric, there are some similarities. Now, last year's details are available on the internet as well, so it's not a secret. I'll just share what is similar and what's different. So what is similar is the fact that both of them were virtual hackathons. So last year's was also, I think it was a 6-week submission period. And the rubric was somewhat similar, but our categories were different. So this year, our categories are more focused on the industries, whereas last year they were more focused on themes. And I remember one of the themes was COVID. Another one was every day is an API day. And I can't remember what the third one is. But yeah, they were slightly different in terms of the theme and what the submission targets were. But the actual format was very similar. The method of execution was similar. And we had very similar help resources as well. So it's a good place to get some inspiration for what happened last year. And in fact, all of the submissions should be able to be reproduced because the submission format is very, very similar. So it was designed to be open source, fully reproducible, and hopefully innovative and inspiring in multiple ways. So yeah, have a look there. If you haven't, I think the links to last year's submissions should be visible on the DevPost website. All right, move on to the next question that we came through. So the question is, will we see our submission once submitted successfully, like somehow to confirm that it was submitted successfully? So I have not submitted yet for this hackathon, but to my understanding, when you click submit, there is a confirmation that says your submission is complete. There is also a project gallery that you will notice on the DevPost website, which will showcase your project and should be available publicly. So one of the easiest ways to confirm that it's working is to open a different browser or a private browsing window, go to the DevPost MuleSoft Hackathon space and see if your submission is visible without logging in. Yeah, that's a very simple way. If you're having issues, use the help function either within Slack or within DevPost to get confirmation that everything's okay. To my knowledge, you can also revise your submission multiple times until the 1st of November when submission closes as well. So you can iterate upon your submission. I did get a notification today that there is a submission already. So you could potentially look at the first one that's been made.
Yeah, I think just to follow up on that slightly, I think the project gallery won't be displayed publicly, probably until after the last submission date. And that's normally just to respect people's privacy and stop people, stealing people's great ideas and putting them in their projects. So you might not see the project gallery burst to life until after the submission date.
Thanks for that note, Dave. All right. This one I will put forward for you, Dave. So the question is, could you please brief about the recognition point in the prizes section?
Good question. I'm not sure I have a good answer, Royston.
I can
summarize
take that.
It? Go.
So recognition comes in many different ways. So the very least of which is the fact that there is going to be an awards event at which all the winners are going to be recognized by having their names shared and their submissions covered. There's also going to be probably at least one blog post covering the winners and the submissions that have been made. So you can look at last year's submissions as an inspiration and see what happened there. So if you want to know what that recognition looks like, go into MuleSoft blogs and have a look for last year's hackathon posts. And you'll notice that there were a few posts that were covering the hackathon. So quite often, very likely you will be getting a trophy if you're the first place winner. And your submission will be covered in potentially a few different avenues like the developer relations space, as well as our public facing content. And obviously you would have the pride and joy of having the MuleSoft winner, Hackathon winner badge associated with yourself on DevPost, amongst many other things. It's a good question for Slack if you want to take that one there, and we can have the rest of the organizing team also contribute. All right, move on to my next question that's come through. The question is, would the panelists reach out and ask for a virtual demo live? So I'll put that one for you, Dave.
So do they mean the judging panelists?
I'm going to take that assumption, and if that's not true, I'd like the questioner to just let me know, but I'm going to go with, would the judges essentially call someone up and say, can you do this for me live?
So correct me if I'm wrong here. The answer would be no. I think the combination of your architecture diagram, your video, and your GitHub repository should give the judges everything they need to see your demo, not live, but at least recorded.
Absolutely. And the only thing I would add to that is that if there is some challenge with getting the demo to work, to be reproduced by the judges, then they might reach out and ask for confirmation or guidance on anything that's been missed. But the intent of the submission process, and it being a virtual hackathon, is that the participants don't have to all turn up live and present because that's logistically quite challenging. So just make sure that your submission is complete and complete enough that it can be fully reproduced by anyone who looks through that submission. Thank you for the question. All right, we have no further questions coming in through the chat or the Q&A link. So I'm going to take it that people are comfortable with the information that's been presented today. Once again, it's not the last opportunity for your questions. If you do have questions, you can register for the hackathon and ask them in Slack. We're available as a team there right until the end of the hackathon. And there's a great community of people who are already in there as well. Alternatively, you could potentially reach out using a number of different ways, whatever inspires you the most in order to get your questions answered. All right, so let me hide this. And we are 45 minutes past, so I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has joined in today and gotten their dose of information about the hackathon. I am truly looking forward to all the submissions that come through and all the inspiration that it's going to provide. My strong encouragement is for you as participants to get started early and get started small, because the later you leave it, obviously the more you will have to do in a shorter period of time. So you do have the luxury of a longer submission period, but it also helps to have something to work towards during that whole period as well. So if you are stuck for ideas, maybe it's a good chance to connect with people outside of your everyday audience and see if there are any ideas that could be beneficial to you in society as well. So with that, just a reminder, all the content from today will be posted on the event page within 24 hours. So you should be able to review everything once again. We look forward to having more of your questions and your comments and your submissions in the next few weeks. And thank you for joining. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.